We executed a tactical retreat, taking up defensive positions with our eyes fixed on the entrance to the cave. I signaled my men to move in, and we slowly walked towards the cave, guns up, locked, and loaded. This video narration may include elements that some might find disturbing. Viewers and/or listeners' discretion is advised. Hi, my name is Lucas, and welcome to Enigmatic Episodes, where we delve into the most spine-tingling stories from the depths of the internet. Each week we select a topic and tell our listeners two hair-raising stories about the subject. One is a chilling creepypasta, a tale that may or may not be true, while the other is an alleged true account based on well-documented cases or news reports, which we present in a gripping narrative format. Details about the stories will be provided after both stories are finished. If you're interested, grab yourself a snack, coffee, or beer, and sit tight as we guide you through hair-raising stories that will make you question what's real and what's not. Our topic for this week is scary soldier stories, and our first story is called, "Is This Thing Broken?" From 2008 to 2009, I served as an infantry team leader for the U.S. Army in the Kunar province of Afghanistan. During a night observation patrol to surveil a village, which we suspected to be a source of IEDs based on a previous successful IED recovery operation, my team settled in the area. At that moment, my lieutenant issued me a new thermal imaging system, Recon 3, that none of us were familiar with. He instructed me to conduct an assessment of its functionalities and disseminate the acquired knowledge to the rest of the team leaders. I spent hours messing with the Recon 3 and was amazed by its clarity and zoom capability. It was incredible. I couldn't resist exploring its different functionalities while observing the village. It was a chance for me to learn more about Recon 3 and how it could help us better execute our mission. While experimenting with the Recon 3, I noticed something odd. An anomalous thermal signature emanating from a specific location within the mountain range. Based on my perspective that night, there seemed to be individuals huddled together in that area of the mountain. This raised suspicion that something was happening there, although the exact nature of the object was unclear. I conveyed my observations to my superior officer and apprised the other team leaders of the situation. Following a brief deliberation, it was decided that continued surveillance of the identified area was warranted to ascertain any further developments. The next night, as I continued to scan the valley using the Recon 3, I shifted my focus along the spur we were set in on and noticed a conspicuous heat signature at the peak of a false summit. I suspected again to be a gathering of Taliban fighters. As I made every effort to obtain a clearer image, the heat signature rose up, revealing what seems to be a being that towered above the surrounding 10 to 12-foot trees. "Is this thing broken?" I muttered to myself. Upon a second glance, the entity moved at an alarming rate across the terrain, taking massive strides. Its movement was so quick that I lost sight of it as it disappeared behind a nearby ridge. I never reported what I saw that night, as I was in disbelief and initially assumed it to be a figment of my imagination or hallucination due to combat fatigue. Furthermore, I was aware that reporting a sighting of a 15-foot being in the mountains could lead to ridicule and disbelief. The following day, my team received an order, a search and rescue operation. The details of the mission were as follows. A friendly infantry unit disappeared during their patrol in the Kandahar mountain range. The unit ceased radio communication, and they did not call in a TIC, troops in contact, or any other form of communication. The absence of such a signal was unusual, and it was perplexing that a unit would just disappear without any indication of an engagement. The objective was clear: locate the missing infantry and relay any discovered information to our commanding officer. My team was transported by helicopters to the Kandahar mountain range, approximately 4 clicks or 4 kilometers from where the missing infantry unit was last seen. We conducted a methodical search of the mountainside, being mindful of enemy presence and the possibility of an ambush due to the presence of cave systems in the area. Despite carrying a heavy load of gear, we made slow progress over the first few days without encountering any signs of the missing unit or hostiles. We came across a well-developed goat trail leading up the mountain and decided to head up the trail, hoping to gain a vantage point on the other side of the mountain and perhaps spot anything of interest. We proceeded with caution as we made our way up the trail. Upon commencing our ascent up the mountain, our team immediately observed scattered pieces of American military equipment on the ground, including whip antennas, radio housings, military-style backpacks, and uniform pieces. The patches on the uniform allowed us to identify them. These came from the missing infantry unit. Just a few clicks up the trail, we saw scattered and broken bones along the way to the plateau. Our extensive training immediately kicked in, and we became acutely aware of the dangerous situation we were in. We hypothesized that the infantry unit had been ambushed, and we were probably approaching the ambush site. In response, we proceeded up the mountain slowly and with extreme caution, taking defensive positions and keeping our weapons pointed at the leading edge. Upon reaching the plateau, we discovered more equipment and bones scattered across the area. There were also several cave entrances located in a strategic position that fed out onto the plateau. As we moved towards the cave entrances, we realized that they were quite large, but there was a steep drop-off inside, and we could not see how far it went down. Given the tattered uniforms and equipment found earlier, we decided that it was too risky to enter the caves. We executed a tactical retreat, taking up defensive positions with our eyes fixed on the entrance to the cave. I signaled my men to move in, and we slowly walked towards the cave, guns up, locked, and loaded. I had my sights trained on one of the entrances when suddenly a flash of movement inside caught my attention. Before I could react, a spear was hurled out of the cave and impaled one of my men. Dan! The shock of the attack left us all stunned as a colossal 13 to 15-foot man with a fire-orange beard and hair down to his shoulders charged out of the cave, letting out a deafening war cry. The creature, donned in animal skins, appeared to be extremely unkempt and unclean. Despite his size, he moved with surprising agility. It swiftly approached Dan to retrieve the spear and possibly use it again. However, my team sprang into action, engaging the giant in combat. In a matter of seconds, the giant fell to our team's superior training and tactics. The aftermath of the battle left us all in disbelief and shock, as we tried to make sense of what had just occurred. We checked on Dan, only to find that he had succumbed to his injuries. We immediately called back to headquarters to provide a detailed account of the event, explaining that a large, possibly human creature had thrown a projectile that had resulted in the loss of one of our own. After the operation, our team was airlifted out by 2 helicopters, one to retrieve our team and Dan, and the other to lift the giant creature. The military had a keen interest in identifying the creature, and their attempts to secure its massive body were met with great difficulty. Weighing over 1,100 pounds, the creature had 6 toes on each foot and 6 fingers on each hand. The helicopter carrying the creature then flew to an airfield to rendezvous with a crew of a C-130. The pilot of the C-130 publicly confirmed the sighting of the 13 to 15-foot tall giant creature with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. However, the statement was later redacted and made top secret. Once back at the base, we were required to provide an after-action report. Our team decided to be forthcoming about the creature's physical description and its spear-throwing attack that killed Dan. However, our leadership demanded a rewrite of the report to make it sound like a routine engagement with the enemy. The report was then classified top secret, and we were all required to sign non-disclosure agreements, prohibiting us from ever discussing what we had witnessed. Unfortunately, we never received any further information on what happened to the body of the giant creature. The entire incident was shrouded in secrecy, and we were instructed not to speak of it again. During my time in service, I didn't speak much about what I saw, both while I was in and even after I got out. I kept it to myself. But then in 2010, I listened to a story on Coast to Coast radio about the giant of Kandahar, and it brought back all the memories of my deployment. I can say that the creature I saw was quite striking, and it left an impression on me. The fire-orange hair that it had reminded me of a local tradition in the area of my sighting, where the locals would dye their hair and goats in bright orange without any explanation. I initially assumed it was a cultural thing that I didn't understand, but now I wonder if it was some kind of gesture to the creature, or if the goats were sacrificed to it. As a Christian, I can't help but recall the brief mention of the men of renown, or the Nephilim, in the Bible. I think that's what I saw, a member of an ancient race of giants that descended from fallen angels. Or probably Sasquatch. Did you like our first story? We would be grateful if you could help us out by smashing the like and subscribe buttons. Your support would mean the world to our small channel, and we promise to continuously improve our content to keep you coming back for more. So thanks in advance, and now let's get on to our next story. Our next story is titled, As a Marine, I Too Have Seen Weird Shit. As a Marine, I too have seen weird shit in the Marine Corps. I was reading 035 Nun's post about his experiences with weird shit in the Marine Corps. Figured I might share one of my experiences, of which I have a few. This was back in 2006 or 2007. Our battalion was experiencing a rash of break-ins at our ramp. Ramp being a fancy term for a tactical parking lot, where we park armored vehicles. There was a maintenance bay with millions of dollars in tools and a bunch of high-speed training aids like 70-inch televisions. This was in a part of Camp Lejeune, known as Courthouse Bay. The history behind the name is that before the U.S. Marine Corps bought the land from North Carolina, the county courthouse was in that neck of the woods. The courthouse itself stood where our barracks were, and across the bay where our ramp was, is where the gallows stood. A ramp guard was posted due to the thefts. Sets of 2 men on 8-hour shifts, plus a corporal of the guard, who wasn't on the ramp, but up in the barracks. Me and my post buddy drew rifles and relieved the guys on guard. This was about 2200 or 10 at night. "Hey, stay frosty, the kid is out playing tonight," the COG passed along during relief. "The kid, Corporal? Whose kid?" I asked. He just grinned and said, "Call me if you need me." There were 2 positions on ramp guard, box guy and rover. Box guy sat in a Connex box set next to the road, and the rover rovered the area. We weren't the only unit in Courthouse Bay. At the time, there was the Combat Engineer School, MARSOC, the Coast Guard Special Operations Training Command, and Force Recon. We kept an eye on any assets they had on that side of the bay as a professional courtesy. I took the first walk around as rover. That's when I got the first weirdness. I was walking back amongst our vehicles, and I kept hearing bangs from inside the vehicles, and occasionally what sounded like tools being thrown across the ramp. Never found anything when I went to look. Side note, the Marine Corps has always been short on funds. It's like a service tradition. So when one of vehicles gets blown up or sunk, the vehicle is recovered and anything salvageable is taken off the vehicle and put into rotation as spare parts or equipment. That sledgehammer with weird scorch marks on the shaft. It was pried out of the hands of a dead Marine who was holding onto it when his vehicle got blown up. That final drive we pulled out of supply, that's got a weird pull to it when it drives. It was on that track that sunk in the bay, the one that took 5 Marines to thier death. It was always a joke about the vehicles being haunted. So I played it off, wasn't going to call the corporal of the guard over some nonsense. So I am walking my post in a military manner and trying to keep the cold at bay and trying not to freak out at the same time. I walk around back to the box and took my turn as guy in the box. About 15 minutes into my box rotation, my radio lights up. It's my watch buddy. "Hey man, you're a fucking hoot, but that shit is creeping me out. Knock it off." I asked him what the fuck he was talking about. He grunted over the radio and again told me to knock it off. I looked at my radio, not knowing what the fuck he was talking about. I shrugged and put my radio away. He came back around to the box about 15 minutes later. "The fuck are you talking about, man?" I bluntly asked him. Apparently, he had heard a giggle when he was walking along the tree line on the far side of the ramp, like 2 or 3 times. I called him a retard, as people do in the military, and took my turn to walk. The first place I went was the tree line because I was planning on checking it out and making fun of him for being a pussy. It was dark back there. The stars were bright and there was a full moon out. But back along that tree line was darker than shit. I was walking along it, not really paying attention, when I heard a twig snap inside the trees. I turned around and brought my rifle up. Bullshit, guard duty or not, there were still bears in North Carolina, and I didn't plan on getting eaten by one. I didn't know what 5.56 would do to a black bear, but I had 30 chances to find out, and I was willing to go on a journey of discovery. I looked into the trees directly in front of me. It was damn near pitch black. I started to get that creepy feeling you get when you are watched, like the shadows were staring back. I backed up a few steps. Nothing happened. I waited a few more heartbeats, just staring at shadows with my rifle at the ready. That's when I caught movement. It was about 3 feet tall, maybe 4, but that's all I could make out. It stood looking in my direction for a few seconds, from about 10 feet inside the tree line. My eyes adjusted a little, and I could make out the vague outline of a person. A kid or a midget or something. It continued doing nothing, and then just like that, it turned and moved off. Looked like it got about 3 feet and just fully disappeared into the shadows. Like ceased to exist type disappeared. I stood watching for a moment, trying to rationalize what I had just seen. Hog, maybe? Recon guys out fucking with us? That had happened before. There used to be a pretty bad rivalry between us and them. Not a professional one either. Just 2 tribes of testosterone-charged guys in their early 20s. Tribal conflict was inevitable, but that was pretty chilled out now. Maybe I had imagined it. Probably had. Nothing will fuck with you like your own imagination. I returned to walking my post, but kept glancing over my shoulder. I kept telling myself that it was my imagination. Nothing more, nothing less. Couldn't shake it though. I made my way back to the box and did a turnover. My watch buddy seemed a little withdrawn, yet kind of wired, almost jumpy. I asked him if everything was all right. He told me he felt like he was being watched the entire time, and it was freaking him out. I told him about the shadow at the tree line. He looked at me with genuine fear in his eyes, and we agreed not to go back there again for rest of the night. I offered him a smoke and he took it. He mostly hung around within sight of the box during his rove. It came time to shift from box guy to rover. My buddy was a bundle of nerves, but I was still cool to rove. I had a loaded rifle and body armor, and at this point in my military career, I still thought I was invincible, so I went to rove. I wandered back down towards Motor T and the Coast Guard docks behind the building. That feeling of being watched popped up on my radar again. I looked out towards the concrete dock. Something was off, and I couldn't tell what it was, until it moved. The top of what looked like a head dropped down beneath the edge of the closest dock, like someone had been poking their head up over the edge of the dock and was just watching me. I would like to say that I was a total badass here, and raised my rifle and started ordering it into the light. I did no such thing. I stood frozen, a sort of fearful indecision stopping me in my tracks. I heard something splash out in the water just the far side of the dock I was watching. Something poked out in my mind. It was my duty to figure this out. It was my duty to walk out there and look down in that water. Another splash in the water. This time I could see water splashing up onto the dock itself. The splashing was getting bigger, like some fisherman had reeled in a shark with plenty of fight left in it. I did a brass check on my rifle and did my best to steady my nerves. I made a fist and knocked the chest of my body armor just to make sure it was still there. I was still religious at the time, so I may have muttered a prayer or two. I took one step forward and I heard it. A sing-song giggle floating on the winter breeze. I heard it as soon as my boot hit concrete. Nope, that was enough to dissuade me of any desire to look in that water. Some hard-ass Marine I was. I turned on my heels and booked it to the perceived safety of the Connex box. I think I ran the quarter-mile to the box in... Well, it may not have been a record, but it was fucking fast. As soon as I got there, I noticed that the box was closed. I called out for my post buddy and the doors on the box creaked open. I asked him what he was doing in there. He shrugged half-heartedly and said something about it feeling safer. I nodded. I understood. He asked me for a smoke and I realized I needed one too. As I was fishing out my pack, I brought up calling the corporal of the guard. "And say what? Shit's creepy," he shot back, nerves in his voice. He had a point. I popped a smoke in my mouth and lit it. I held out my lighter to light his smoke. He leaned in cigarette first and froze just as he was about to light up, his eyes suddenly wide, staring over my shoulder. I sighed. I knew I was going to turn around, and there was going to be some weird shit behind me. I remember thinking, fuck, let's just get it over with. I turned around, and there was in fact some weird shit behind me. It was a child, a little girl, standing about 100 yards up and dead center of the road. She was dressed in a white dress, an older style white dress, like the kind you see on little girls in old cowboy movies. If you are thinking something along the lines of the girl from The Ring, I am sorry to disappoint, but she looked normal, like she was pulled out of a Rockwell painting. Well, except for her eyes. Those were made of evil. I can't even describe them except to say they had no place in a child's head. When I looked into her eyes, I felt the hate in my soul, and it was fucking chilling. I once looked into the eyes of a Wahhabist jihadi as he bled out from a chest wound. That amount of hate in his eyes was the only thing I've ever seen come close to that child's eyes. I looked at me buddy. He looked back at me. Neither of us knew what to do. We just knew that this shit was wrong. The child started walking towards us. "Oh fuck," my buddy muttered breathlessly. And to be fair, that was a valid point at the time. The giggle floated across the wind again, but it didn't stop this time. It was like it was on a loop, but each time it replayed, it was slightly different. At one point it was a higher pitch. At another point it was a lower pitch. Mixed with those eyes that never broke contact, it was very disconcerting. I started to get dizzy. As she moved closer, the edges of my vision started to dim and started pushing in towards the center. She was getting closer. I tried to bring up my rifle and drill the little shit right between those creepy-ass eyes, but my arms wouldn't cooperate. She came closer. I tried to move backwards, but my legs wouldn't play ball. She came closer. I tried to tell my buddy to get the fuck out of there, but my mouth wouldn't do its thing. She was almost there when I saw it turn down the street. Salvation rides in a 2003 Chevy passenger van. As soon as the headlights lit her up, she was gone, and I could move again. I demonstrated this by falling to my knees and gasping. I instantly felt like I had a motherfucker of a hangover. The van rolled up to us, the passenger door swinging open. "You boots okay?" It was the corporal of the guards. I responded to him by vomiting. The COG chuckled. "I told you the kid was out playing tonight." I hope you enjoyed our stories for this week. Now let's dive into the details of these stories. Let's start with the first story. Is this thing broken? This story is based on the confessions of alleged soldiers who were deployed in Afghanistan. The origins of this story are shrouded in mystery, with conflicting reports about where it first surfaced. Some claim it was first mentioned in an interview on Coast to Coast AM, while others say it came from a now-deleted YouTube video posted by the self-proclaimed supernaturalist L.A. Marzulli. Regardless of its origins, the story gained traction and was covered by various news outlets, leading to the U.S. Department of Defense being forced to provide a statement on the matter. Authenticating this story is close to impossible, as all the alleged soldiers who told their stories wanted to remain anonymous. So, as usual, it's up to you to decide. We left some of the links for articles we use for this story in the description box. In my opinion, if these stories came from real soldiers, then most certainly it's true, as my father was a Marine, and I can remember him saying that a soldier will never lie about the death of a comrade. Moving on to our second story. As a Marine, I too have seen weird shit. Is a creepypasta from Reddit written by Rev Black Rage and shared under the subreddit r/nosleep. All credit for this entertaining and hair-raising story goes to Rev Black Rage. We also left the link to Rev Black Rage's original story in the description box. Now let's put aside these great stories for a bit and take this time to thank all the brave soldiers who have chosen to stand up and defend the freedom and democracy of their countries. On behalf of everyone, we are forever grateful for your courage, dedication, and sacrifice. Your unwavering commitment to duty, your readiness to put yourselves in harm's way, and your willingness to defend our values and ideals make you the true heroes of your nation. So to all of our soldiers, thank you for your service, and thank you for your sacrifice. You are true modern-day heroes, and we are forever grateful to your forces. Thanks for tuning in to Enigmatic Episodes, and for lending us your ears as we shared these spine-tingling tales. If you have any suggestions for topics or stories, or if you have a real-life creepy experience of your own to share, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below or connect with us on our Facebook account. All of our social media links are in the description box. We value each and every one of our listeners, and we read all of your messages, so feel free to drop us a line, and we'll do our best to reply. That's it for this week. We'll be back with more spooky stories next week. Again, my name is Lucas, and you've been listening to Enigmatic Episodes. Thank you so much.